and we'll get started. All right, so here we go, guys. PLCs. Let's get rolling on this. Come on. All right, so what is a PLC? Guys, it is a professional learning community. I guess if we wanted a true definition of it, it is a collaborative process where educators are working together to create a cohesive curriculum to assess students and use the data to ensure that students have met the standards. What I can tell you already, guys, about PLCs, we've actually started the process already. So a couple years ago when we were setting up our power standards, that was the beginning part of this whole process. So all we're trying to do with this PLC from this point on is just continue to further it throughout the school year here. We have a number of different ways that we can organize our PLCs. The most ideal way is by your subject areas. So we are able to actually do these PLCs. It doesn't have to be a core class. We can do it by the different encore classes that we have. And we've got all the different standards, and I'll show you guys where all those are at when we're done here. Don't confuse PLCs though with team time, as you can see here, because it's slightly different than what that is actually. And we'll get to the nuts and bolts of it just a bit. We can organize them vertically, and we can also organize them virtually. But ideally, guys, we want to be doing this by subject area. Okay, so just a few misconceptions about what a PLC is. The first one, it's a process that takes away teacher creativity and forces teachers to teach in the same way. That is not true, okay? Creativity is actually encouraged and often shared amongst the different groups that we are going to have. The only common elements are the learning targets and the assessments. What we do in between that is up to us. Another myth that we have heard a lot about is that this process creates more work for teachers. Again, that's not true. What we actually are really focusing on here, guys, is once we make all of these assessments, they're going to be common across all the different areas. And it's going to allow us then to further dive into the data and make sure that our students are getting the help that they're going to need. Okay, process is going to end in standards-based grading. Again, that's not the goal. We've actually had no conversations of any kind about moving to standards-based grading. Instead, we're kind of looking on proficiency scales and using these common assessments again. And then another one, PLCs are only for teachers. Again, not true. The PLCs are being designed more for student learning so that we can see the benefit that our students are going to get with this. Okay. PLCs are broken into three big ideas, and this is kind of the basis of what we're working with here. The first one is a focus on learning. Okay, we understand or accept that learning is a fundamental purpose of our school, and hopefully everybody, once we get rolling with this, are going to be willing to examine all of the practices that they do, and hopefully it's going to help them impact the learning that their students are getting. Big idea number two, it's a collaborative culture. Working together is a big part of this. And as you saw before, we're really focusing mainly on that core areas or whatever groups that you have. So English teachers, health teachers, any of the other encores that we have. That's kind of where we're heading with this so that everybody has a high performing PLC team. Big idea three, it's driven by results, guys. What we're really looking for is we're looking to be the most effective teachers that we can be. One of the things that we talked about in our last meeting last week, we kind of, and I'll show you guys a graphic in just a little bit, but we kind of looked at where we were at as a school at Central Middle School. And we've realized that with us already beginning this work, we're not as far along as some of the other schools are. And I'm kind of thinking more like the elementaries. The high school and the middle school, we're a little bit further behind, but the beautiful thing about a PLC is it doesn't have to be scheduled. Like we can just work on this and get what we can get done throughout the different school, throughout the school year that we have. And I know you guys have seen that Dan has set up some time for us on Wednesdays. So there's 4 essential questions that drives every single PLC, no matter where you are throughout the country. And the first one is, what do we want all of our students to learn? That's going to be the first driving question. The second one, how will we know when they've learned it? What I would say is we're currently kind of right at those 2 stages. 1 and 2 is right about where we're at here at Central Middle School. Because what we've done, guys, is we've already determined our power standards. What we now are trying to do is on step number 2 here, or these essential questions, we're trying to figure out how to use that data to better drive our instruction. And I think I'm gonna just go ahead and say it, because you guys are probably maybe at the same point. We've gotten a lot of data thrown at us. I don't even know how to use it all. And I think that's probably one of the big sticking points of why we feel that this is gonna be something that's gonna be good for our school. Once we get through steps 1 and steps 2, we go to question number 3, how are we gonna respond when our students aren't learning the materials? And then step number 4 is how will we respond when they do learn it? What can we do then to deepen or enrich that learning as we are going? So this is kind of, these last 2 slides that I showed you, the big ideas and these essential questions, these are the things that we're really kind of driving at with this PLC or these professional learning communities, because we definitely want to make sure that we are being the most effective teachers that we can. And we also realize as a group, and it's a pretty eclectic group that we have, we realize that we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. So by being part of this PLC and working together, we can hopefully take some of those weaknesses and turn them into strengths, and then take another person's weaknesses and turn them into strengths too. It's kind of this collaborative effort on it. So that's kind of where we're headed. I do have a video here. I'm going to show you guys. I'll catch the lights here. I believe it's about a 7-minute video, but what you're going to see here is this is a gentleman by the name of W. Richard Smith, and he is one of the leading instructors of PLCs throughout the country. And he's going to kind of just walk you through some of the practical steps of getting your PLCs set up and how they're going to progress kind of from this point on. So I'll let him go ahead and explain it. I'll pop the lights here.
You notice I'm on the theme of clarity, making sure things are transparent. And I got to tell you, in 2004, we did the same thing you did in our district. We all went down to hear Rick and Becky. Yay! Great. We went and heard Rick and Becky. This is wonderful. It's absolutely spectacular. We were so excited. So we went back. We trained all our staff. We told them all about the 3 things that were important about PLCs. We taught them the 4 questions of a PLC. We had them do all that. And by the way, we got so good, we had all the teachers memorize the 4 questions. What do we want them to learn? How we know they learned it? What do we do if they haven't learned it? What do we do if they haven't learned it? And we sent them out. We said, go forth and PLC. And the teachers went out and said, what do we do? I know the 4 questions, but what do we do? So we quickly realized that we had not given them a roadmap, something they could follow when they got back to school. So I'm going to show you this flow chart, but I'm going to do it a wee bit different. So you can see how it works. So I need 3 volunteers. You made eye contact. You're in. Can I have you 3 come up here? You make eye contact when you're in. You just look at me right here. Okay, so this is Tom, Jennifer, and Rhonda. Rhonda's the PLC facilitator for this team, and she's going to walk you through this flow chart. True? No. Here we go. What do we want all students to learn? The first thing we said is you have to find an essential standard. Not just any standard, but a really important standard. A standard that every kid needs to know. We'll make you a 4th grade team. And the standard that this team has chosen is order of operations. Order of operations is important. Got a math teacher here? Order of operations is important? How important? I'm going to tell you, you can't do algebra unless you know order of operations. So this team has chosen that. And that means that they need to have every kid in the 4th grade walk out of there knowing how to do order of operations if they're going to be successful in the next grade level. True? So they're going to understand that standard. They're going to sit down, they're going to discuss it and make sure they have a common understanding of what that standard is. And they're going to try to understand the expectations for that. But then how we know they've learned it? They're going to build a CFA, a common formative assessment. And what Rhonda's done here, she's a genius. She's so bright. Rhonda's gone and she said, Tom, give me 3 questions on order of operations. She's asked Jennifer for 3 questions on order of operations. And she says, I'm going to put in 4 to create a 10-question common formative assessment. There's the test. Look pretty good. But here's what they learn when they look at that test together. Tom, oh my gosh, he writes the hardest questions in the world. Oh my gosh, they're at university level for 4th grade. They are killer questions. Jennifer, she writes them at kind of a 1st grade level, like, do you like order of operations? That sort of question, okay? And Rhonda, she goes to the state release questions, she pulls them out, she modifies them, and she puts them there. So now they have a 10-question test with all sorts of different stuff. What did this team just learn about themselves by looking at that common formative assessment? Say it. They have different expectations. They have different expectations. Where's my math teacher? Which kids do you want next year? Well, I'm going to tell you, Tom, he failed half his class because they couldn't do it. Which kids do you want now? Folks, you ever had this? You ever done this? Which teacher did you have last year? You ever been there? Well, folks, that's a scary thought in itself. So what this team is doing is they're realizing their expectations and level of rigor are at all different levels. So they're going to go back and they're going to modify. They're going to adjust that, and so they have a better understanding. Tom's going to come down a wee bit. Jennifer's going to come up a little bit, but they're going to create a test that, by the way, if the child passes this test, you will be guaranteed they know order of operations. True? Now, here's the other thing about this. In looking at this test, you have to ask yourself, why are they creating the test before they teach it? It gives them a target. It says, here's the target. And by having them come to agreement on that CFA, it provides a common target for them. So the next thing, before they move on, they're going to do a P&P. They're going to set the proficiency and protocols for that test. So the proficiency, Tom, how many does a kid have to get right to say he's mastered order of operations? 8. How many, Jennifer? 9. Go ahead. 8. Now, folks, you're going to see this all the time. In fact, Jennifer, because she writes them very easy, she may have said, well, you know, if they get 2 right and they're happy, that's okay. But we need to come to consensus on the number that it takes. And it sounds to me like consensus-wise, can you buy into 8? She buys into 8. So we're going to set 8 as the proficiency level. A child must get 8 out of 10. How many days do you need to teach order of operations, Tom? 10 days. 10 days. 10 days. Folks, they've chosen 10 days to teach order of operations. That doesn't mean they're just going to teach order of operations every day, but in a 10-day period, they will ensure that every child's mastered that. So we're going to put the date for the CFA on the 11th day. Folks, you always want to put it 1 day outside of the last person that teaches it, as long as it's reasonable. If you have somebody who says, well, I need the first semester, that doesn't work. But 10 days in this case, I think it's a bit long, but they've chosen that. So they're going to put it on the 11th day. So the next thing, we've built our test, we've set the proficiency, we put the date of the test, but folks, there's a piece that teachers miss, and it's a big deal. The protocols, the rules for giving that test. Those rules become critical because guess what? Tom, can you use calculators when you take your test? Yes. Can you use calculators? Yes. Okay, well, think about it. Do you see what just happened? What happens if they give that test and these 2 allow calculators and she doesn't? What happens to the results? Oh, I'll flat out tell you, I've seen teachers go nuts on each other over it because suddenly you cheated and I didn't. True? So, and particularly primary teachers, I have a kindergarten team in my district that we had to go in and actually make sure they did the protocols, because then there was always accusations, well, you did it this way, no, we do it this way. Get your protocol set. So we are going to use calculators, okay? Can you read the test to the kids? Yes, they can read the test to the kids. But folks, think about those type of questions as your team. Does that make sense?
Okay. So some of you are probably still really wondering about the PLCs. And I can tell you that when I was first approached to be part of this PLC team, I was kind of a skeptical person too, because I was thinking in my mind, my first thought was, oh great, we've got all this work that we now need to do. When are we going to do that? What I can tell you is after we started diving into this process, we're already doing it. I'm going to just use science for an example because, Courtney, you were here, a science teacher. Aaron, you're teaching 7th grade science too. We were already sharing a whole bunch of the stuff that we had. And really all we're trying to do with this is we're trying to streamline it and make it easier and more accessible to our teachers. And also at the same time, making sure that our students are getting the best education that they can. So even though it seems like, and I agree, I was, the first time I saw this, I was like, well, how are we going to do this? We've already started doing the process. Okay. So what we're really trying to focus on with our PLCs this year, guys, is we're just trying to figure out and make sure that we're all getting on towards that same page. And that's really, really what our goal is for the rest of this school year. We want to just make sure that when we get a chance to get together and start working on this stuff, we know where we want to go and what we want our kids to be able to accomplish. And that's the whole point of our PLC group here. So, I mean, I don't know how you guys are feeling about it. I actually have on this next slide here a little bit of a roadmap for you guys. I know it's tilted. Sorry, can't really we couldn't fit it all on the slideshow. But basically what we're going to have to start with, and one thing that we've already done, we've already got our priority standards. Those are our power standards. And the only thing we're going to have to do with them is we're going to have to go back and look at them and unwrap them a little bit more and really kind of focus it down onto about 6 to 8 really, really, really hardcore standards. This is what we need our kids to be able to know by the end of the school year. After that, we start moving into these I can statements, which are these student-focused targets. So once we have created these common assessments and we've got these kids learning the stuff that we want them to know, we have to be able to say, okay, we want our kids, I can be able to do this, or I can be able to do that. And then we get to the common assessments. And again, guys, I'm going to just use the science because that's my background right now. We already have a lot of this very similar assessments that we're using. So really all we're trying to do is take a look at how we're teaching and streamline it and make it easier as a department to be able to get the information to these kids so that they can learn, hopefully, the things we need them to learn. Hit me up. What do we got for questions? Because I know I had a lot of them when we first started this whole process. Right towards the beginning of the school year, Dan asked me to be on the committee. And, the first thing I went in, I kind of knew a little bit about PLCs, that they were this collaborative learning community, but I didn't know the nuts and bolts of it. And after kind of spending some time going through this, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't know if it does to you guys, but it makes a lot of sense and why we would want to continue to work and build towards that end goal of having all these common assessments so that these kids, when we send them on to the next building even, hey, they're going in there and those teachers already know this is what they've learned. We then need to build upon that. So you guys have any questions, please, I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, but.
I always have a question.
Yep.
So I think it sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds wonderful for departments, but those of us that are by ourselves, are we going to end up doing the work by ourselves? Okay. You have Brooke and Aaron as a department, English has their department.
Yep.
I'm by myself, Darcy's by herself, Pat, so I think that's the question from an encore standpoint, are we going to get the support? Are we going to be expected to do this ourselves? Like what role is that going to be with Encores?
Okay, good question. Our goal is to not make anyone have to go through this process alone. That is our goal. I'm not quite sure yet because we're still working out logistically how we want the groups to look. We haven't got to that step yet, but I can assure you that we are going to make sure that nobody is going to be doing this on their own. I don't know if you guys are aware, but you guys have all been shared a drive that has all the different standards in it. And I'll show you guys that in just a bit if you aren't aware of that. But no, overall, the Encores, we are striving or going to try to work very hard to make sure that we have a very cohesive, collaborative group, not just an individual person.
So now I'm going to flip and be
Yep.
the opposite person.
Yep.
Why would, let's say, Lisa, for example, or Patty, they don't have anything to do with health? Why would as a facilitating group, why, let's just say, for example, if you put them with me, why? Because they have no, focus in on that subject.
Yep.
So there's just that both sides of, as an Encore teacher, like I get it, I want help, but in the same aspect, it's like nobody knows my standards better than I do, so why would I have somebody help me?
Right. One of the things that we will not do is we will not just randomly put a teacher assigned.
Right.
So we wouldn't be mixing the different departments. What we are kind of looking at is, so being a health teacher, we're trying to make sure that when you are collaborating, it's with, like, say, Mrs. Wall, because when she does nutrition, health, and fitness, and we can kind of tie everything together with that, along with, I would say almost like the PE teachers too.
Right.
I think you guys would all fit in as a group. As far as, with Darcy, I think it's more the technology part. So it's not only just going to be you, but we actually might even be looking at having some of you work with the other teachers that are teaching technology stuff in the other buildings, so that we have this collaborative group that is all on the same page, so that we can get it hammered out and make sure these kids are getting what they need. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I know, and I'm glad. That's fine. I'm glad, because I had a lot of questions too. Like that was.
Well, and I think the other thing is everything is always geared towards cores.
Yes.
And now being on the flip side, we have to remember that there's Encores as well, which are just as important.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
and I get it. I've seen both sides.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that's known.
Yep, absolutely. Aaron.
You just mentioned collaborating with other buildings. So with like core classes, with the core departments, is there a plan then to have us collaborate with high school teachers?
Potentially. We are not to that point yet. We're kind of just looking at trying to keep it here first, get all of our stuff organized before we begin to look further in the district. It's certainly an option, but I don't think it's anything that's going to happen probably within, at least, like, say, for the science department, it's not going to happen this year, because we gotta focus just on getting our schedules first before we start going outside of our building. So. A little shadow back here behind me. Well, and if you have any more questions at any time, if you happen to think of something, please don't hesitate to come and talk to me or to Megan or to Christy or to Anna. We're the teachers that they asked to be part of this. Dan and Jake are also part of it, but obviously with all the responsibilities they have, we're kind of taking more of the ownership for it than they are at this present time. So if you have questions, please go ahead and just make sure you let us know. We'd be happy to try to answer them as best we can. I do know that Dan has set up that we are going to be having PLC time 2 times a month, and that's going to be on the Wednesdays. That it's not, let's see, one Wednesday, I think it's the first and the third, or is it second and the fourth? I'll have to look at my schedule, because we got so much stuff going on Wednesdays, because we got staff meetings, one of those. We've got, typically that's kind of like an early out sometimes when we've got the other trainings and stuff that's going on. So I'll make sure I'll let you guys know that for sure, but I do know Dan is trying to help us out, and we're not going to try to take up a lot of your time. We'll try to keep the meetings fairly short. If we can be done by 4:10, 4:15, that's how it's going to kind of roll from this time on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop my recording here.